What is the most obvious sign a couple won't last long? Story 1. Their communication just doesn't improve over time. Being in my first real healthy relationship, I've realized that both people need to be committed to their individual and collective growth to create a fulfilling, healthy relationship. If one or both people aren't trying and make a habit of withholding their true thoughts and make no effort to make the small changes to eventually meet the other halfway, it's inevitable. Story 2. I would say no emotional connection, like the other person cannot trust you and tell you what he feels or what he's been through or deals with right now. And here, I understand that some people need their time to open up and find their own words to express their emotions. I'm one of them. But I'm referring to people who don't even try, even for small stuff. Just to give an example, normal day. You and your pal sit together. You ask them about some stuff that's been bothering him, because you see him worried and sad. He doesn't say anything or that's nothing. This happens over and over again. Or you do state that your pal doesn't like, but he's not telling you. The only time you will hear what he didn't like in the relationship or what he didn't like about you will be in an argument or at the breaking point. Story 3. I always find couples who post about how much they love each other on social media break up pretty quick. I'm not talking about like one post, but the excessive ones. Recent example being a girl I know who posted probably every other day about how this guy is her world. She'd be lost without him. She misses him when he's not there, etc. They were together about 3 months total. I just find it so obvious. Story 4. They casually show signs that they don't respect each other. It can be a lot of eye-rolling, mocking, condescending laugh, casually saying, "You're so stupid," embarrassing in front of friends. Story 5. When they fight with each other in a passive-aggressive way in front of friends. Went to this dinner once where the guy was showing off his new plasma TV, and it ended up with the girl throwing one of his awards into the TV to smash it. Really uncomfortable to be a guest there. Story 6. Lack of trust. Not necessarily about the big stuff, fidelity, money, your real name, but namely in basic, everyday communication. If one or both partners is constantly questioning what the other person meant, or are constantly looking for reasons to get offended or taken aback by what the other says, it doesn't bode well for the long-term prospects. As a witness, you can feel the underlying tension when they interact. The stress of it all usually leads to resentment and dissolution of the relationship. Story 7. Honestly, I'm not sure I know anymore. I know couples who literally don't speak to each other about their day-to-day life and schedule, and yet they're still together. I know couples who never ever talk about the big questions in relationships, but somehow manage to white-knuckle their way through it. I know couples who would openly disrespect their partner to their face in public, and they still stayed together. Story 8. Constantly taking time apart from each other for minor disagreements and/or arguments. Bonus points if they go on vacations or stay with their parents during this routine cool-down. Almost always one person will inevitably cheat. One person trying their hardest to control what the other person wears, says, eats, drinks, or do. You should compliment each other, not be each other. Seeking advice for common-sense things like boundaries, likes, dislikes, disagreements, etc., when communicating with their partner, would have resolved the issue relatively easier and faster. They married in less than 6 months from dating each other. Bonus points if they're in the military or if they follow a Christian-based religion that stigmatizes having sex out of marriage. Marrying out of religious guilt, fear of fornication, or on an impulse will surely be the worst subjective reasons to do so. Story 9. The other day I had a customer stay late at my bar who was meeting a friend. They ignored that I told them they had to order food soon if they wanted to as the kitchen was closing. They ignored the servers loudly putting up all the chairs and saying goodbye to me before leaving. They ignored me closing the bar right in front of them. Then the guy asked, after he realized we were closed, if they could have another drink. Like, yeah, sure, I don't want to go home. I want to watch you slowly have a second drink for 40 more minutes. I am also very visibly pregnant, and I am exhausted all the time. He was telling his friend about his divorce, and I thought, good for her. There is no way someone selfish and entitled like that would make a good partner. So I'm going to say people who act entitled and oblivious in social settings, cut the line, don't return their cart, rude drivers, etc., are more likely to have their relationships end and be wondering why they just couldn't make it work. Story 10. Constantly digging through each other's phones and social media because they're just so certain they're going to find evidence of that person cheating. Everyone acts like I'm crazy for calling this a red flag, but every single relationship I've ever seen where they constantly demand access to the other's device, it always ends in disaster, and usually not even because of cheating, but because of just a complete lack of trust on either side of the relationship. Like, don't get me wrong, it's one thing if they are actually being suspicious, and giving you a genuine reason to suspect cheating, but if you just decide that for no reason other than your own paranoia that you need to dig through every single partner's device to be sure they're not cheating, then that's just not okay, and you need to calm down. Learn how to trust people because trust is the key cornerstone to any lasting relationship. Story 11. We had a couple who lived above us. They fought constantly. Shortly after we got married, we got each other's names tattooed on our wrists. Maybe a month or so later, this couple came down and excitedly showed us that they had also tattooed each other's name on. I immediately cringed and knew they would regret that decision immensely. Of course, they ended up breaking up. We're still going strong 16 years later. Story 12. When they won't match your gait. Always has to be in front of you or will hang behind you. Never wants to be in pictures if someone's taking a picture and motions you together, or you feel like taking a selfie of both of you, or hand someone your camera to take a picture of both of you. Story 13. When they can't laugh at each other and share no inside jokes. Seriously, I could not imagine having an unfunny partner. We laugh hard at least once a day. Still, after 18 years together, humor is everything as relationships get on in years. Story 14. The most obvious sign to me is whether each individual in the relationship is the exact same person with their partner as they are without. When I see that someone is funnier, or more relaxed, or any other slight change in personality when they're not with the partner, I know they aren't meant for each other. Think about it. Story 15. Just their interactions with each other. One of my partners has what appears to be a great marriage. His face either lights up when his wife calls, or he pretends not to be affected by it. He doesn't want to show it, but he really wants to take the call. And he'll then drop whatever he's doing to patiently address any concern she has. Another coworker, recently married, seems annoyed every time her husband calls, texts, or otherwise communicates with her. Story 16. Bickering in front of others. No real unified front. Comments like, we fight like all couples do, makes my spidey senses tingle. All couples do inevitably fight from time to time. All humans who interact regularly will fight from time to time. And fight is a subjective term, but a person adding an assurance that the amount they fight is definitely not abnormal makes me immediately sus that something about the intensity or frequency of the fights necessitates that you tell yourself it's normal to be okay with it. I'm sure it's not always the case, but in my 44 years of friendship, even when discussing with girlfriends our disagreements with our partner, my friends who add this caveat are the ones who later admit their problems were worse than they let on. Divorce, breakups, etc. Story 17. A buddy of mine and his wife had written cheat lists. These were hypothetical lists of who they would potentially cheat on each other with. Well, they both cheated on each other, and those people were not on the lists. Story 18. Unresolved issues with ex-spouses. I know that dealing with an ex-spouse is tricky, especially when children are involved. But you have two people with difficult ex-spouse situations and kids, and it's a ticking time bomb. Story 19. Always keeping score. A guy I used to work with. He and his wife always kept score with each other, not being cutesy about it but malicious, and they both let each other get away with it. I remember the one day he and I were hanging out after work for about 2 hours on a Friday, and on Monday he was telling me that when he got home, his wife was waiting in the kitchen with her coat and purse on, and said, "Since you got 2 hours without having to be with the kids, I now get 2 hours on my own. See you in a couple hours." Asterisk edited to add example. Story 20. This thread is making me realize how breakups are yet another industry millennials are killing due to not being able to afford them, having long since enmeshed their rent/grocery/car costs, lifestyle bills. I know so many couples with all of these classic warning signs who've nevertheless been together for years and years, with no signs of splitting, and who laugh about how they couldn't have afforded their own place on their own by now anyway, by their 30s, and having been in these relationships for 5, 10 years. Sad stuff. Story 21. I had slammed my finger in the door and the tip came off. No long story to it. I just slammed it hard enough and the half ripped right off, bone showing and all. I had to have 2 separate surgeries and couldn't move my left hand for 2 weeks while it healed, and I could not get it wet at all. My honey and I have been together for almost 5 years. Just got engaged last year. Busy, active 29-year-olds. I never felt so genuinely and unconditionally loved when he wrapped up my hand and arm, bathed me and my body so carefully and gently, washed my hair so sweetly, washed my face with my face cream, dried my hair, braided it, helped me dress, and handle all my ice packs, heat packs, my meds, and all that kind of stuff every single day. Not that I would have doubted it at all, but just how naturally and sweetly it came to him, how he did it. For about a week straight or more, mostly the first week where I was really whacked out and dealing with losing half of my finger. That's when I really truly, in our souls, saw how we be when we're old, crippled, and wrinkly. Not only did he take care of me, but just how gently and sweet he made it for me. Story 22. I'm willing to admit being wrong about this, but performative displays of affection on social media or in public suggest to me that they might have problems down the line. I think it's unsustainable, and the moment someone drops off in their performative intensity, a bunch of arguments will ensue and possibly escalate from there. Maybe that's just because I know I'd be terrible about it if it were expected of me. Story 23. Honestly, no idea. Some of the couples that I used as examples of the perfect couple are divorced, and other couples that I swear would eventually murder each other are still together. Sometimes I think the clearest sign they won't last is if after I meet them I think, gosh, they sure make a nice couple. Story 24. How childish and dramatic they act and talk, especially about cars, housing, children, work. Basically, they don't seem put together. As a matter of fact, they're both so messy, and even with help of therapy, they just dig themselves in so deep, and then cut you off and burn the bridge as if it will improve their lives, somehow only to realize it's much worse than before because you were actively being their unpaid therapist. Story 25. When they cannot or will not do anything independent of the other person, whether that's due to jealousy or a controlling or codependent relationship. For example, I love my boyfriend, enjoy spending time with him whenever I can, and miss him when he's at work, but I also don't base my entire life around him either. I have my own interests, and still like doing stuff by myself or with family, friends. And even when we're just at home, we have our separate extra rooms. Man cave office for him and guest room / office / craft room for me. We can go to do our own thing for a while. Then we still come together to have meals or watch TV, etc. We also don't obsessively call or text each other all day long either. If anything, it's mostly me sending pics of the cats. Story 26. I had this casual thing going with a musician, and one night my friend and her husband joined us. Now my date is off chatting to people, getting hugs because he is playing later, and my friend couldn't understand why I was okay with that. It was at this point that I became a little more observant and realized that they both watched each other the whole time. It was almost creepy, but absolutely no trust. Doomed, I say. Story 27. Incredibly high expectations right off the bat. Being super into someone right away is rare and feels amazing, but keep those boundaries, baby. No relationship is going to fail for taking its time to grow, but creating expectations early on is a high bar to maintain when you barely know each other. Story 28. I think you're asking about the less obvious signs. When someone talks about their partner, it usually reflects well. When you've known someone 6 months and didn't know they had a partner, that's usually a bad sign. Happy couples just think about one another and mention each other in conversation. Unhappy couples just think about themselves because they are in a survival and coping mindset. Story 30. Everyone has things that annoy them about their spouse. It's typically something small and stupid. I don't like the way he never replaces the toilet paper. I don't like how she leaves her socks everywhere. I don't like how there is always hair in the sink, that kind of stuff. It's when you go beyond just, hey, that's an annoying trait. But my partner is a human being, and we are bound to annoy each other sometimes, to how fucking dare you. You know how much I hate that. Are you doing this on purpose? You just want to make my life hell. That shows way deeper issues that are not being addressed, and it is a smoking gun for a relationship. Story 31. Mothering people who won't change their habits. My best friend was dating this guy, and he really struggled to look after himself and do things for himself. She is a good person, so naturally she was helping him do everything and make sure he had as much support as possible. When she told me that she was the one driving him to work just up the road, or the only one cooking, or the only one cleaning, I already told her, hey, that's not gonna last if you're mothering him. You should have a chat with him about it. She told me she didn't mind, it just got exhausting sometimes because she had other things to do, or she had to think for him. Eventually, it really got to her, and she tried communicating it to him, and he just made her feel guilty and insisted it was just how I am. So she felt guilty, and I told her, you know you're allowed to feel for him, but it doesn't mean you have to do everything for him because he won't do it himself. He is a good guy in some respects. He just has a lot of mental health issues that need to be addressed. I do feel for him a lot, and I know that's super hard. She did try her best to be there for him, but sometimes it just doesn't work out when you're being so drained. They ended up breaking up after 2 years, and I feel sad for them both. She really loved him, but there is only so much you can do for a person. He unfortunately ended up sleeping with the girl he told her not to worry about throughout the relationship. So I ended up not liking him so much. I still feel for his mental health issues, but it's no excuse for stuff like that. I'm glad she isn't with him anymore, and she seems to be a lot happier because she is focusing on herself. It's a shame some things don't work out, but sometimes it's for the better, and she didn't realize that until she felt free from him. I'm actually really proud of her because she is going out a lot more now and doing things she really enjoys along with making time for herself. Anyway, if you relate to any of this, just take it as a sign you cannot save everyone and you cannot mother every man. I've been there myself, and if I ever see the flag rise, I pull down and I go. Story 32. Even couples who hate each other stay together forever. While the Gottman research is telling, I used to be friends with a couple where one hits the other and even kicked the dogs, and the more toxic one seemed to have pure hatred for her wife. I had to end the friendship with both. Story 33. One has an anxious attachment style, and the other has an avoidant. Avoidants hate being close, and will put up walls to avoid becoming too close, whilst anxious need reassurance that they are loved and everything will be okay. Avoidants don't provide that, and therefore this dynamic fails. One of many examples. Story 34. They only call each other babe. I have yet to see a couple who's been together over a year, happily, who only call each babe. Edit. Not to say that some relationships don't start like this, then end up calling each other their normal names, then have a happy relationship. But when that babe shit starts, you know it's moronic, and they're only together for the fuck. Or they're banging other people, and it's easier to not accidentally call your partner a different name if you call all your side pieces that too. Story 35. How well they are able to reconcile after a fight or argument. If they ignore, block each other, or don't talk for days because of an argument, then that is a huge red flag. I swear my BF and I have definitely had some heated arguments before, but within an hour, maybe two, we are perfectly fine and are able to talk about it once we've cooled down. I can't imagine ignoring your partner for days. Story 36. Years ago when I was a wedding photographer, I noted the size of the diamond and how dramatically it was flaunted. The bigger the rock, the shorter the marriage would be. It turned out to be a pretty accurate prediction. Story 37. When you keep reading and reading the comments to this question to find more reasons that align with you staying together, but you find the opposite, that you are doomed. Actually, I believe you can choose to make it work if the couple loves each other. There are hard times in life, and not so hard, but it's how you choose to deal with those hard times that determine if the couple will make it happily, not all the time of course, through life. Story 38. Over the years, I noticed some women get lots of flowers delivered to them at work. It took me a while, but I finally figured it out. Hubby was doing a lot of apologizing. Either he was a jerk or she was always mad at him or both. Those relationships always ended in divorces. If people live together but are always in different places in the house, they're not interested in the same things and don't prefer each other's company. Wife suddenly starts stepping up her appearance for work, works late a lot, and goes on business trips all about the same time. If a couple has extreme differences about money and don't compromise or communicate about it, sure sign it won't last.